Panthers have a lot of decisions to make involving their cuts, their waivers by tomorrow at 4. You have to have your roster down to size by tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and most teams start their cuts a bit early, right? If you know a player is going to go and you don't have a reason to hang on to them, you make those moves. The roster is nowhere near complete, and they also need to shop effectively. So we'll break it all down, right? Some names you might recognize that have already been cut. Quarterback Jake Luton, kind of a camp arm there. It was expected. Running back Cam Peoples, I think he would have needed to have a very, very big day in that preseason game 3. The App State running back didn't get started on the right note with a fumble, and was kind of uphill battle from there, and he was part of the group that's already been moved on from. Linebacker Bumper Pool. I'm not sure anyone really expect him to make the team, but it's a great name.
Great name.
Bumper Pool.
I mean, you almost want to keep him just because of that.
A handful of defensive backs, handful of guys in the trenches, a couple of wide receivers, and a kicker, all already gone. No real surprises there. Not yet, at least. Still on the chopping block, though, and the chopping block is a very callous way to talk about somebody losing their opportunity to fulfill a lifelong dream. But some guys who I guarantee you now are still dreading when their phone rings. Spencer Brown, running back. Matt Corral, quarterback. Shi Smith, receiver and kick returner. Michael Jordan, offensive lineman. There are quite a few guys right now that probably aren't sleeping very well. Right? They're not sleeping very well. And you know what's even tougher for a team that wasn't very good last year, like the Panthers, who had the 9th overall pick but prior to the trade, so the 9th worst record, is even after the deadline comes and goes, when the Panthers see everybody else's cuts, they may be making waiver claims. And that means
easily. And
when I say maybe, they will be. And what that means is, even if you make the roster initially, you might get bumped out for someone they choose to pick up on waivers from another team. So be ready for the cuts by the deadline, and then more cuts to come after the Panthers start to claim guys that were cut by other teams. And if you're the Panthers, you have to. This is where, like, being a GM or being a head coach is not a fun place. I'd love to fantasize about what I would do if I were a GM. Oh, this is how I would handle this position. This is a guy that I love in the draft in the mid rounds. That's the fun part. I do not put myself in the shoes of the person that has to cut somebody.
Yeah.
Especially someone I like.
Yeah, having to tell somebody, hey, you've worked your whole life to get to this point, to have this opportunity, and sorry, you weren't good enough. That's essentially what you're saying. Hey, you weren't good enough to be one of our 53 players.
And even more brutal, to Tuesday at the deadline call somebody and say, your job is safe, you made it, like, congrats, you're on the 53, and then on Wednesday have to call and go, we didn't think this guy at your position was going to be cut by the Vikings, and we put a claim in on him and we got him, so sorry, now you're not on the team.
Yeah.
Like, that is one of the more brutal things you can do. So be ready to ride the roller coaster with the Panthers roster over the next 3 or 4 days, right? Because even if you think, all right, this position group is settled, oh, guess what? We weren't anticipating Bam Knight to be cut by the Jets.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, happened today.
Former NC State running back.
So maybe somebody like Spencer Brown was hoping to cling to that. Maybe they're going to keep an extra running back because Miles Sanders isn't always healthy. Well, if they do now, I guarantee you they're going to be putting in that claim for Bam Knight.
I think a lot of teams are going to be doing that.
Maybe even if you're somebody like Blackshear, you're looking around going, that just became more interesting. I hope one of those top 8 teams put a claim in on him.
Now, something to keep in mind when it comes to these roster decisions is, especially for the Carolina Panthers, is that their injury situation at wide receiver does kind of muddy the waters a little bit because, all right, what is the prognosis for Terrace Marshall Jr. to return from his back injury? What about DJ Chark and his hamstring? Okay, he might be ready to go week 1, but knowing his health history, DJ Chark, can you rely on that? Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of questions moving forward. Okay, Laviska Shenault has the concussion. Apparently he was in stage 4 of stage 5 to return from his concussion, but we all know how concussions can go. Once you get that first one, it's a lot easier to get that next one. So, all right, what's the what's the reliability of some of these guys that are hurt right now? Do you keep 7 wide receivers on your 53 roster initially because of the injuries that you're dealing with? All right, if you keep 7 as opposed to 6, well, that's got to bump somebody else. And that person that gets bumped, maybe it is a Spencer Brown, he gets placed on waivers. When other team's like, we need a running back, you may lose Spencer Brown. Hopefully, maybe to stash him on the practice squad, but he might get picked up by another team.
And sometimes that little stashing is part of the process, right? Like if you have 2 guys and it's close, you're like, I think this one might make it through waivers. There's no way that guy makes it through waivers. So then you cut a guy, hoping to get him back on the practice squad, and who knows, maybe you're picked up by another team, and right, your life changes in that way. It's a really interesting spot in the calendar because it's so close to game 1, and there's so much roster movement going on. But if there is anything we've learned about the Panthers roster this preseason, it's that there are very few jobs etched in stone, especially at the end of the roster, right? I mean, there's borderline starters that I'm like, yeah, you might be able to do without them, but that's darn sure the case for numbers 40 to 53 on the roster.
Yeah, especially with this Panthers squad because, yeah, you know who your starters are going to be. Well, I remember it was McCall, who they signed, started the first preseason game with the first team defense and was later released and then was picked up by the Patriots, then did not pass a physical and was later they didn't actually complete his contract with the Patriots. So clearly something else going on over there regarding that. So again, you don't know who's going to get let go. They're guys you think are potential starters for a team, but they might be even with a young guy on a rookie contract. It's like, wait, we can shed some salary and just start the young guy as opposed to the veteran. There's veterans that get cut.
And there weren't many explosive preseason performances, right? Because the announcers love it. If you watch preseason, they love to have somebody make a big special teams play or score a long touchdown, and they go, that guy just earned himself a roster spot. There really wasn't much of that for the Panthers. There weren't those like, hey, I'm a young guy on the fringe of the roster bubble, I'm going to make it so they have to keep me performances. Antoine Green, I actually think, kind of had that against Carolina for the Lions.
That's right.
North Carolina receiver from a season ago, 70-yard touchdown, 3 catches, 97 yards. It's like it's going to be pretty tough to cut that guy a day after or a couple days after he puts that performance on tape. There wasn't a ton of that for Carolina, which makes it just all the more up in the air. And if Antoine Green does get cut, that's the type of performance that you put on tape that makes other people want to claim you.